Hello, my name is Woody. This is Change in the House of Pods, a podcast about Deftones. Today, a holiday special with Jeff Irwin from Willhaven. That's Wings of Mariposa, new music from Willhaven, who, if you're unfamiliar, go way back with Deftones. If you've been a fan for a long time, you might have seen them on tour together, maybe even more than once. Willhaven's from Sacramento, and Jeff's relationship with the guys in Deftones predates and largely exists apart from music or any of their success as recording artists. And for me, that's part of what makes this special episode so special. It's a pretty incredible gift to have somebody like Jeff share his experiences as a participant in the rise of my favorite band. That's pretty damn cool. But on top of that, Willhaven is awesome. I think I've said this plenty of times, but when people talk about the Deftones family tree and their peers in Sacramento, man, I've always had a soft spot for Willhaven. They're just so fucking heavy. And if you take a quick look at the guests I've had on this podcast, it's no secret I love hardcore. So, again, connecting with Jeff, having him participate in this project is extremely special. Another reason this episode is special, the main reason, the reason there's a new episode at all today, it's Dia de los Deftones. Man, I can't tell you how geeked I am for this. I am literally flying my whole family, my wife, my kids, even my mother-in-law, to San Diego so we can do this thing on Saturday. The lineup is amazing. That new Cold God is great. Turnstile, maybe the hottest band in rock right now. Freddie Gibbs has the album of the year for me, so I'm going to get really lit when he hits the stage. I love Phantogram and Deftones. Man, am I ready to see Deftones. Okay, even though these are going to be cold takes by the end of the day tomorrow, I'm going to tell you what I'm looking for in the set list. I think it's going to be similar to the spring set list with a couple of surprises. Hopefully more new ohms, Spell of Math and Ceremony in particular. I feel like those need to be played. And I think a guest vocalist is on the table for some reason. Like my gut is telling me Sarah from Phantogram is going to join them for Cherry Waves, but honestly, it doesn't really matter. What matters is Deftones are playing Dia de los Deftones, and that is a beautiful thing. Finally, briefly, before we get going here, this is a one-off episode. To be clear, a holiday special in honor of Dia de los Deftones. Season 4 is still in the gestation period, but there are so many things I would love to talk about. Just last weekend alone, Around the Fur turned 25, Saturday Night Wrist turned 16, and Crosses dropped one of the best songs of the year with Vivian and announced the CD, Permanent Radiant, due in December. And Polyphia put out their new album, which Chino is a featured vocalist on. And that song slaps too. I really, honestly, marvel at the extremely high quality of music Chino makes. It's unreal because it's all so different, but so good. It's something Jeff actually talks about for a little bit here, too. He puts Chino in a class with guys like Mike Patton and Perry Farrell in this regard. And by the way, that puts those two guys in pretty good company. No, but I think it's a cool comparison. And I think you're going to enjoy Jeff articulate it. You're going to hear him tell some amazing tour stories. You'll hear about Deftones before they were signed, where they're at now. We'll even speculate a little bit about their future. And I think throughout all of it, you'll be able to glean some insights into who they are as men. And for me, it's those moments that make me feel good about being a Deftones fan. But first, before we start talking about Deftones, Willhaven's got a new album coming out. And they've been at it for a while.
Yeah, it's been a process. So we started back in I started writing in about 2019. And then thinking we were going to have a record out by 2020. And then we had Download Festival in England for 2020. So we were going to get the album out right around then. And then, of course, the world just went upside down. Yeah. So all of 2020, we just kind of recorded at the studio just slowly. And then Just took our time with it, just picked it apart. And I think the song's been rewritten like 5 times, and I've added stuff and taken stuff out. And, but it's been good. I've gone over with a very fine comb, and I'm very stoked on how it's come out and come together. So we're just finishing kind of the final mixes now. And then hopefully early next year, it'll come out. So
3 years in the making then? Really?
yeah. Well, I think COVID just stopped everything because
Sure.
we were we did some touring in 2019 and we came home and said, let's write a new record and get something out before Download 2020. So we were, writing a lot, and then 2020 came, and I think right up to like almost 3 weeks before Download was going to happen, that's when they finally canceled it. So we thought we were going all the way up until March, I think, but the record was still not done. And then they canceled the Download. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't think any show is going to happen for a long time. So let's just go back and rework the record, listen to it, take it apart, make sure that we're just completely happy with it. So, and we toured a little bit this year. We went back, we finally did Download this year. So we've kind of done like a couple shows here and there, but not many. We just kind of I just been working on the record nonstop. But for me, I'm a perfectionist when it comes to stuff like that. And if I have the time to, so the last 3 years, I just been like working on this record pretty much my whole free time. So, but it's been fun. I'm having a blast doing it. It's like my favorite thing is creating music. So I'm just having a good time doing it.
Just to go back a little bit, how long has it been since the previous album?
That came out in 2018. Yeah, I think it was 18 that Muerte came out.
Wow.
So yeah, it's been a while.
That's I mean, obviously COVID, like you said, it put the brakes on everything, but for you guys to sort of have that energy, I guess, to follow up, because prior to that album in 2018, it was quite a while, right?
2011, I think it was. Yeah.
So that momentum sort of it got put aside.
Yeah, I mean, like, it just takes us a long time to get stuff together, and Willowhaven is not our job. It's not our main hobby, or it's our main hobby. So it's not something we need to have a deadline or anything. We just take our time with it, and it's just more fun thing. Like, I didn't even think we were going to do a new record. I thought after 2019 we were going to maybe just call it a quits or take a long break. But when we came home, like, we sat down and like, hey, we're having fun. Let's write a new record. So that's when the process kind of started. And then yeah, with COVID, everything just got shut down. So I was like, yeah, I'll just take our time with it and then just make sure we make a really good record. So
do you have a timeline now, looking forward, or are you just playing it by ear?
No, I think we have one single out already.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to put another single out, I think, in a couple weeks. And then another single right before the record drops, which would be probably early next year, February, March, I think, when the record will finally come out. So it's almost done. And I can't do anything more to it. I've pretty much done everything I possibly could to this record. So it's like, put it out now. It's like, it's not going to get any better. So,
I mean, if you've rewritten several songs several times, yeah, sounds like it's probably time to drop it. That's cool though. That's really exciting. Especially for your band. Like, this journey of your band is, I feel like, it's a unique journey in that you have this established, like, you have a long history, and then you kind of have gone away, and then you come back, and it's like people are still, I feel like, especially Deftones fans who are like, yeah, fuck yeah, Willhaven. Like, I feel like there's a conversation among us. They're like, we're stoked on it. It's cool that we're ready, and you have this audience that's like anticipating your return. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm so blessed to have that, because I think when bands go away, people just forget about them. And I mean, there's still a lot of fans that we have that don't even know they have a new record out. It's kind of hard for us to get the word out sometimes, but yeah, when we go play England, or we kind of show up anywhere. We played New York a couple of years ago. We hadn't been there since like 20 years, and it was almost packed. So it is crazy how we can just go away and then come back and people are still there, and it's like, it kind of blows my mind. But it's more of like, a lot of it has the connection with Deftones, because a lot of these people that we, most of our core of our fan base saw us when we toured with Deftones.
Yeah.
And that was kind of for a lot of the time, people had seen the Deftones for the first time. It's the first time I saw us as well. So there's this connection of like, oh yeah, I saw these guys together for the first time. And so they kind of have this kinship with us, where like we kind of have just this thing with them that they just resonate with. And so we've been lucky to have that for sure.
I totally connect with what you're talking about there. That's real. That's super cool. So let's go back a little bit then. Let's go all the way back. I'm excited to ask you the question that I ask pretty much everybody.
Sure.
When do you first remember hearing about Deftones or finding out about Deftones?
It's funny because I didn't meet those guys through so much music. So yeah, it's a weird family tree. It's all splintered out. But I graduated high school, and right when I graduated high school, I started taking some summer classes at City College. And there was a girl in my class, and we were talking music. And I played drums forever. I got my first drum set at 12. So we were just talking music, and I said I'd play drums, and she's like, "Oh, let me introduce you to my friend Malcolm. He's in a band." And Malcolm is the original bass player for Far. So I ended up hanging out with Malcolm, and he invited me to a Far in one of his practices, which was Far practice. And there I met Sean Lopez and became really good friends with Sean Lopez. And so I was that was my first local band that I even actually knew, because I grew up in South Sacramento. So I didn't really know the local scene at all. We were kind of out of the zip code for that a little bit. So Far was like the first local band. I'm like, oh, this is cool. It's like guys are in a band. And then, through there, I had other friends that went to high school still. And through that group of friends, I met Todd Wilkinson, who, was a guitar player for Team Sleep. And him and Chino were best friends at that time. And so Todd was having like a get together at his parents' house when his parents were gone for the weekend. And he was still in high school. And he's like, "Hey, come hang out at my house." So I went over there, and that's where I met Chino, and he'd said something like, "Hey, that he sings for this band Deftones." And I'm like, "Oh, cool, whatever." I was like, I didn't know much about any local bands or anything. And the Deftones were just starting out. So
roughly what year was this then, do you think?
I met, it was right. So late 91, 92 is when I started hanging out with all these guys. And then, so me, Todd, and Chino, like we were just skateboarding like every day. Like we would just go skate and hang out. And then Chino had just moved in with Chi at an apartment at the college here in town. And so I'd go pick up Chino, and that's where I met Chi, because they were roommates. And Stefan worked at a Mexican restaurant that me and Sean would go to all the time. And I think Steph was the manager there or something. So that's how I met Stefan. It was kind of through Sean, because we go, "Hey, that's my boy Steph, and he plays guitar in Deftones." I was like, "Oh yeah, and I've heard that name," or whatever. And then Abe worked there too with Stefan, but Abe wasn't in Deftones then; he was in Fallacy. So, that's how it kind of just organically, we were just all friends, and then, just hanging out with them, I started going to shows. And I think the first Deftones show, I thought they played some backyard party somewhere in some random backyard party, and I thought it was good. But I think the first show they played, I saw them play at like I think it might have been the college, like at lunchtime or something they played. And
which college?
Sac State, Sacramento. That's where Chino and Chi had their apartment, was on Sac State College, right near the Set College. So
like somewhere on the campus there.
They would play like in the middle of the quad, I guess, once in a while. Because Chino and Chi had a job there for a little bit. They worked at the convenience store for a little bit. And so I don't know if they had ends of the college or whatever, but they play there once in a while. And I think that was the first show. I can't quite remember, but I think it just started off as me, they're my homies. And then, I'd go and watch them play shows. And, but I mean, I wouldn't lie to say right off the bat, like when I heard the first demo of Far tape, I was floored. I was like, that's still one of my favorite records, is their first demo. And then when I got, somebody gave me the Deftones demo, that was the same way. I was like, these guys are amazing, So they were my friends, but they also really fast became my favorite bands too. Like not just local bands, but all-time favorite bands, because I just loved their music, both bands. And so yeah, I knew all their songs and stuff, going to shows, and then it just became this like thing, where we'd all go support each other and go to other shows and hang out. There was something special about both bands. So I just knew that something was in the future for those guys. They were both insanely ahead of their time, so charismatic. Both bands just had that thing, and I was just happy to be a part of it. I was happy to be just homies with them all,
Yeah. Wow. And you were playing drums, but you weren't in a band yet. Well, like, because Will Haven, I understand, was a result of Sock, correct?
Yeah, so I played drums when I met Sean, but I wasn't in a band. And so I would just kind of hang around those guys. I roadied for Foreign Deftones like way in the early days, like helping them set up, carry equipment and stuff. And then me and Sean moved in together in '92. Yeah, was it '92? Early '92. Me and Lopez became roommates, and then we started. He played guitar, of course. I was like, "Hey, I play drums. Let's start jamming." So we started basically Sock. I played drums. He played the guitar. Grady had just moved in with us as well, so he was our roommate. So we got him to sing, and then our friend Adam played bass. So that was like my real first like. I was in a band before Sock, but it wasn't my taste or anything. I just kind of just played to play. But Sock was like the first band. I was like, oh, I love this band. I love being in this band. And so, but it was more for fun. And we recorded a demo tape and then played a couple shows. And then it was funny because like right when Sock started kind of getting off the ground a little bit, that's when they got signed to Sony. And so Sean's like, I don't have time for Sock anymore. So like, and then I just like, okay, I'll just try to start something new. But I didn't think Will Haven would be what it was. I just was going to just kill time, and like, watch my boys like succeed really. But then it turned into something else. But
Little did you know.
Little did I know, yeah, that everything wouldn't happen. But yeah,
And
I mean, that's kind of like how it started.
so Sock a hardcore band?
Yeah. So when I met Sean, he kind of introduced me to like all that hardcore straight edge scene. Like I didn't know anything really about it. And then Sean pretty much changed my life. Like Sean's like a big part of my life where my life just went the other way, And so we were all in like Earth Crisis and Gorilla Biscuits and Snapcase and Bloodlet and all these bands and Sepultura. And so when we started Sock, we kind of wanted to have that vein of like hard metal, but kind of hardcore roots, and Sean we were really into like riffs at the time and heavy riffs. And it's funny because like even before Sock, Deftones had a practice spot in Sacramento, and me and Sean would go over there, and Stefan would set up his rig, and Sean and Stefan would play riffs, and I'd play drums, and we called it Flower. It was just kind of a funny little thing we made up, but it was just a battle to see who come up with the best riff, and I would just play drums to it. And so that's how kind of Sock kind of spun off that a little bit, and then we formed Sock. But yeah, it was like metal, hardcore, Sepultura roots, but super heavy. But yeah, it was fun. I mean, Sean is an amazing, everybody knows him from Crosses and stuff and far, but like that boy can write some riffs. So he's awesome writing riffs. So yeah.
Dude, that's insane. A couple of things that you said have just like completely blown my mind. First of all, like being there behind the kit while those two guys are ripping it is pretty insane. And just thinking about like how that's like a lot of dudes' wet dreams. You know what I mean? Like, like there's a lot of fanboys out there that are going like, oh fuck, dude, that's wild. Like
here's another funny part of that story is that somehow the practice spot that they practiced at Deftones at that time was owned by the drummer of Dokken, Wild Mick. And so he had his kit there set up, and they had like a full-on rock stage there. They built inside this warehouse. So when I went to go jam with those guys, I would sit behind Wild Mick's kit and play drums while those two were playing guitar. So I'm sitting behind Dawkins' drum kit while those two were playing guitar. It's so weird. Just it's so funny.
Dude, that's awesome. I forgot that Dawkins a Sacramento band too. Yeah, that's right.
I think the drummer is. I was looking up. I couldn't figure out why Wild Mick was here because he's originally from LA, but his brother, his brother lived here or lives here or lived here for a while. So I was trying to make the connection. I didn't really get, but yeah, his brother lived here for a while, and his brother was in a local band here. So I think he built it for his brother or whatever. Yeah. It was so weird.
The other thing that you said though that is super wild is that you used to what did you say? You used to tech for the guys back in the early days when they were touring in 91, 92 when they were playing shows?
Yeah.
What were they like? What tell me like describe Deftones playing shows in 91, 92 like that. I mean, was it dudes in a van? Was it that kind of scale, or like, can you paint that picture for me a little bit?
So the funny thing is that the only two people in the band that had a car was Chi and John Taylor at the time. John was playing drums. And so, but those cars weren't big enough to fit any equipment. And back then I had a Volkswagen bus. So they would just throw all my equipment in my bus, and then I'd just drive it to the Cow Club or whatever. Actually,
Awesome.
they played a show at Stone in San Francisco, and I had to drive my bus to San Francisco. And I didn't think it was going to make it with all their gear in it. But yeah, I was just there to help out the homies. But not a lot of us had cars back then. So I was on one guy that had a car, so I could get the equipment around. But
Wow.
but yeah, it was just kind of everything was kind of DIY. There was just local just shows and little tiny clubs, and Deftones were able to get into the San Francisco market a little fast, and so they play down there a lot, the Stone and stuff like that, and Bottom of the Hill. So yeah, it was just more just like, it was very underground DIY, just like,
Who was doing that? Do you know who was booking all of those shows for them? Who was getting them around everywhere? I mean, obviously I know who was helping them get their shit from one place to another.
Yeah, right.
But who was setting that up for them?
That's a great question. I don't know who got their earlier like gigs. I'm not sure who took the reins on it. Maybe John Taylor, because he's pretty good at because he runs he's a sound guy at one of the clubs here in Sacramento, but he's always been pretty active about being in the scene and getting to know people. And so he might've helped. And then they eventually got Dave Park, who was their first manager. And Dave was really good about getting them in. I think maybe Dave was the one who got him into the San Francisco scene, got him into the Stone and stuff. And then he got him into LA. So Dave was a big factor of them getting kind of out of Sacramento and going to play other cities. But they didn't get him. I was the one driving around.
That's really cool to hear you say too that you identified them as your favorite band like right away. That them and Far, like, it's so unique. I hear about this music community, the Sacramento music scene, and and thinking about I understand it a little bit more now in the context of your sound, Will Haven's sound, and how that sort of came about, or at least started. But I had wondered, like, was there a hardcore scene within this Sacramento scene, like that all of these bands existed in such, like, it's such a dynamic, you know what I mean, group. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, it was a kind of a crazy scene because we had everything you can imagine. It was so diverse. I mean, there was a bit of a hardcore scene. We had a band called Blindside here, and they were kind of like more the vein of Sock, just heavy, straight edge. There was a couple of circus tents were just up the hill from us. They were kind of hardcore-ish, so there was a tiny scene for that, but not a lot. I mean, we were all kind of, even Sock, we were kind of more the underground bands, but then you had Deftones and Far, and then like one of my favorite bands from here was Funky Blue Velvet, and then Prairie Wheel, and I mean there was all those bands sound completely different, so it was a very diverse, unique scene going on at the time, and no one was trying to copy each other at the time, and everybody was just staying in their own lane, and I don't know, it's funny when you look back on it, like, wow, there was no egos, there was no I'm better than you. Everybody kind of just shared the spotlight, and everybody kind of just took their, it was their time to shine. It was their time. Fallacy was the first, and then Deftones, and then Far, and then we came a couple years later after that. But it was just, it was a special time to be in Sacramento. Of course, it didn't get the attention that Seattle did, but I mean, I don't think there was probably better music coming out here, because a lot of the Seattle bands, there's a similar sound to them for a majority of it, but Sac was just so diverse. Like, everybody was doing their own thing, and it was just, but everybody was really good too, which was crazy. But yeah, it was a good time.
Do you remember when it sort of started to happen for Deftones, like when things started to take off, or did you feel like it was sort of because they had already been touring and traveling and getting out of the city? Did you notice?
Yeah, when they started going to LA a lot, I think Dave got them down. They were playing LA quite a bit, going down there and playing a lot of showcases. So I think the word was getting out that there's this band coming along, and started getting a little bit more attention. And of course they were selling out the Cattle Club, no problem. And then we were playing San Francisco and getting a good crowd there. And then when they were playing LA, I was like, okay, now I always knew that band was going to get signed. Like, they were just, I mean, I don't think they were put on the earth to do anything else but play music. I mean, Steph is an amazing songwriter. Chino's a god. You know, he's basically meant to be a singer. He's got the charisma, he's got everything you want in the lead singer. He's got, you know, and he's had that since the day I met him. He's got that charisma, that swagger. He's just always been the coolest guy in the room. You know, Chino is what you think he is. He's just that dude, you know. And then Chi was a force on his own. And then and John was in the band. John's a great drummer. And I love John Taylor's drumming. And those first demos he played were awesome. But when John quit and they were looking for a drummer and they got Abe, I was like, that's it. Like, that is an all-star band, because Abe was by far the best drummer in Sacramento. And I would go see Fauzi and sit behind Abe and just watch him play, because I was just so fascinated with his drumming. And when Deftones finally got him back in the band, I was like, that's it. They're going to get signed. They're going to be huge, you know, because Abe was just that special drummer that band needed, you know, just to put him over the top. So when Abe got in the band, I think, when you go back to your question, when Abe got in the band, I was like, that's it. Like, it doesn't matter something's going to happen in the next couple of years for this band, you know? So, and then started going to LA. I was like, okay, now, you know, I just figured somebody's going to grab him. So when they said they got signed to Maverick, I was like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. I mean, I expected someone's going to pick him up. So I wasn't totally shocked when they were like, oh, you got signed? That's crazy. I was like, okay, yeah, it's about time. Yeah.
It's interesting to me thinking about that time in particular, when they got signed, and like the courtship of Deftones and like how that happened. And then I wish I could remember the name of the dude in the label. There was some article that came out, or it was just like a short article that came out a few months, maybe 6 months ago, about the guy who almost signed Deftones, but he blew it or something. It was like, I think,
Martin, was it Martin Connor, or it was Roadrunner, wasn't it?
It was Roadrunner. Yes, it was Roadrunner.
Yeah.
It was like, I almost signed Deftones, but then he wanted them to change their name, I think.
Yeah.
But that was kind of a big deal then for them. Yeah. Like thinking about getting signed, you know what I mean? Putting themselves on a national scale.
Yeah. And it was awesome for us, because like, being such good friends with those guys, I was so stoked for them. I was like, yes, like one of our homies made it, you know, they've crossed over into that world, you know, where this can be their day job now, you know, because like we were all struggling to like make money, and like we were paying, you know, we had bills and rent, and like still trying to play in the local scene, and for them to get signed, I was like, yes, you guys finally made it. You get out of Sacramento, you can go tour, you can, you know, try to have a life, you know, on being a musician. And then right after that, Far got signed. So it was kind of just two things at once, like, whoa, you know, both my friends are signed out to major labels. Like, this is crazy, you know? So it was a pretty awesome moment. I was happy for both Far and Deftones at the time. You know, I was like, oh, it's good to see my boys like get the recognition they deserve. Because from day one, I was like, these guys people need to hear this band, you know, they can't just be stuck in Sacramento. Like, this needs to be out into the world, you know? So for me, when they got signed, it was almost like, thank God, now somebody's going to hear them, you know, that just not in our circle anymore. You know, the world's going to hear these guys now.
Wow. That's so incredible. That's like, what an incredible thing to be a witness to, you know what I mean? It's almost cinematic, you know?
Yeah. And I pinch myself every day. I'm like, I can't believe I was like in the middle of that, you know, like, and seeing where Deftones are now. And unfortunately, Far didn't. I mean, they got recognition, but, you know, unfortunately, they couldn't keep it together. But seeing where the Deftones are now, I pinch myself like, God, like I remember those days just hanging out, driving around in my van, and now like seeing them where they are now. It's like, it's weird that I was in the mix back then, and seeing that all, you know, flourish from nothing. It's pretty crazy.
Was there anything ever that, I mean, obviously you identified and you were able to like see the, you know, the skill that they had, and you were excited about the music, but to see where they are now, and to think about, you know, their ability to persevere and to sustain, what do you think, what qualities about those guys have made that possible, have made their, 30 year collaboration, like, what makes it so strong? Why do you think that they've been able to pull it off?
It's that friendship, you know. Those guys are not a normal band. I mean, they are true brothers. Like, I mean, they've known each other since they were 15 years old, and they've lived every day together in buses and vans and planes. And even before that, you know, like when we were coming up, we would all hang out together. And so the Deftones weren't a band because they had to be in a band. It was like they were true homies, and they played music just because they were friends. They liked to play music together, and I think them growing up together was a big part of it because, Sean and Chris had kind of grown up together, and Malcolm and Jonah were kind of newer guys in the band that kind of came from other cities. And so they didn't really grow up together. And even though they meshed so well together, that band was so amazing together. They didn't have that core growing up together. Deftones are organically made, like they've known each other forever. So it's that friendship and it's that brotherly love. And it's funny because like even Willhaven, we've had a couple of our original members leave, but I'm still best friends with those guys. Even though they're not in the band, I still talk to Mike and Wayne every day. So it's just one of those things. I think it's a Sacramento thing. It just, we were all grown up together. We all love each other. We don't want to do anything else, and I think it's just their kinship with each other that they've been able to persevere everything. A lot of bands would not make it through this, but a lot of bands didn't grow up together either. So that has a lot to do with it.
That's wild. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And thinking about all those times spent on buses and planes, I would love to know what it was like. Did you guys tour stateside with them before you went overseas with Deftones?
Yeah. Chino's been. I thank Chino every time I see him for like giving us the opportunities he's given to us. Like, being homies with him, like that's one thing I love about Deftones. They've always looked out for their friends before anything else. And, we put out our first demo tape and Chino, like he loved it. And, he would call me and say, this stuff's awesome. And then he gave it to Max Cavalera, just handed it to him and, said, check this band out. So he was always kind of championing us from the beginning. And then they gave us a couple shows in LA. That would let us open up for him in LA. And then, which I was always grateful for. And then one day I went to see him in San Francisco, at Bob of the Hill, which is a pretty small, club. And I'm hanging out and he just walks up and he's like, hey, you guys want to go on tour with us? And I'm like, I was just kind of in shock, because our first record has just barely come out. I think it maybe been out like 2 weeks. Our very first record. No one knew who we were, and I was like, yeah, I'd love to. And he's like, cool. He's all, I'll have our agent call you and we'll make this happen. And I'm like thinking like, is he mean just a couple days or is like, and he's like, and I was like, is this for like a week? He's like, no, I want you guys to do a whole US tour. I'm like, oh, wow. So I was like, oh, okay, whatever. It's not going to happen. And then sure enough, as their agent called us the next day and said, hey, Chino wants to take you guys on tour. So we ended up going out on tour. But the cool thing was that first tour was that we opened up and then Far supported and then Deftones headlined. So it was like the Sacramento traveling circus, but that was all Chino. Chino handpicked us and Far to go on tour with them. And no one knew who Willhaven was. So for him to put his neck out for us is like, that's a pretty bold move, and Around the Fur had just come out. Like I think El Diablo and Around the Fur came out right around the same time. And Far, a bit of a name, but of course they weren't a huge support act at the time, but it just made a great package. We were all best friends. We were all having fun. And all three bands were just young and hungry and going up there and just ripping it every night. And to me, it was probably the best time of my life, being on that tour. And sometimes even Abe's like, that was his favorite tour too. It was like, it was so fun and crazy. And then, yeah, halfway through that tour, it was going so good. Chino and Abe pulled me in their hotel room, like, hey, we're going to Europe after this. Do you guys want to go with us? I'm like, yeah, sign me up. So, but that tour was really good because it was only us and Deftones. So we were the main support. We were the opener and main support for Deftones. So it was just the two of us. So when crowds came, they just saw us and then Deftones. There was no opening acts. There was no like waiting around for hours to see Deftones. So like that basically gave us a stage to just become who we were, like that kind of gave us a platform to build this huge fan base. And so, we were just in the right place at the right time, but that was all Chino and the rest of the guys, Stefan and Abe, sticking their neck out, telling their agent, like, we're taking this band out no matter what, and I'm sure they got a lot of pushback because Around the Fur was still starting to get a little bit of a name. And, they could have taken out a little bigger band with a bigger draw, and help them get a little bit of more publicity, but they just took out us, and some little band from Sacramento, and it worked out. But I can't thank those guys enough for sticking their neck out for us, and we've built we built a career just off that, that time with them. Yeah.
What do you think it is about those dudes that, because that's noticeable from a fan's perspective, in watching any of their careers and how they continue to collaborate and make music, and tour with bands from Sac, with artists from Sac, with musicians from Sac. What is that?
I just think it goes back to the homie thing,
yeah,
we were a pretty tight knit group of friends, and it's one of those things, like when you go on tour, especially when you go on tour, you want to take your friends,
yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of times you go out with bands and they're just like the opening band, just kind of just not really, you don't connect with, and some might have egos and,
Word.
Or they're just taking advantage of the situation. Where we're just there to have a good time and play music. And we know who got us on that tour. We know Chino stuck their neck out for us, or Abe, or, Steph, or whoever. So we're very appreciative of that. And we try not to step on their toes. We give them their space. We know what not to do and what to do, and how to push their buttons and not how to push their buttons. So it just makes them, it feels more home, when you're on the road with your friends, and when you collaborate with your friends, it's that way. So, and luckily we have such a great, farm of amazing musicians in Sacramento. It's like, you don't have to go far to find some, like Lance was my roommate for 10 years, and, and he's a great musician. He's our homie. So it's like, of course they're going to take their homie with them, and,
Word.
But we have so many great musicians in this town that we're all friends with, that we can make it happen. I mean, Willhaven took out Lance for one tour with us, and we've taken other friends that here in Sacramento that have been our touring, musicians or whatever. So we just have a great, like I said, farm of people we can pick from in this town that we can depend on, but are still our homies,
So something that a couple of things that you've said have made me wonder. Obviously, you go out on the road with all of your friends, you're going to have a good time. I'm sure you remember. I don't usually ask for give me the wild story, but come on, give me a wild story. Give me a wild tour story from back in the day. It's an all Sac lineup. There's got to be some wild stuff that happened.
It's funny because the US and the European tour we did, we started in October of 97, and then that tour finished in March of 98. So we were on the road for a long time. And which is funny, when I look back, it wasn't even the bands that were the crazy ones. It was the roadies. The roadies, the Deftones roadies were out of control. They're the ones that got the parties going. They were there to have a good time. And I have more stories with roadies than I do with any of the band members. And you can name names if you want. Nobody's going to know.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because they were all it was, at the time it was Bobby Twitchell, who was actually Korn's roadie for a long time. He was Abe's drum tech. Unfortunately, Bobby passed away a couple years ago, and it sucks, but Bobby was awesome. So much fun. And then Ming was Chi's brother. He was a Chi's bass tech on that tour, and I've known Ming forever, and it was fun having him with us. And it was mostly those two guys where the trouble started. But yeah, that's about how it was though, because we've known Bobby for a long time, and of course we all knew Ming very well. So, and it was just even all the roadies we were all friends with. So I think everybody was just because we were so close and everybody was such good friends, anything kind of went, and there was no one's gonna fire me. I'm Chi's brother. It's it was one of those things where I think no one was scared of getting fired or getting in trouble, and it just got crazy. So there was one night in particular, and we actually spent Thanksgiving in Boston, and we had a day off, and we decided hey, let's go have a family dinner. So we ended up getting into this restaurant, and it was us and Deftones and all the roadies, and we ate, and then the drinks started coming, and we were taking shots, and then we had this thing where we would take a shot and just throw the glass in the restaurant and broke all the glasses, and then we went to the hotel, and Chino and Abe had these these gas powered scooters, and they got on the scooter and they were driving around that in the hotel lobby, or not the lobby, but the hallways, just driving these like gas-powered scooters all down the hallways. And this must have been like 2 a.m. So everybody's like peeking out, going, "What the hell's going on?" Is here going down the hallway, and they're just wasted. And then they came and knocked on my door, and it was Stefan and Ming and Grady, and they were all just drunk, and they're knocking on my door trying to get in. I wouldn't let them in. So I heard that they went down to their Deftones tour manager, who was Jim Crotchy at the time, and they knocked on Jim's door, and Jim let him in. And Jim was like, "Okay, I'm gonna go to bed. You guys just like just hang out if you need to, but I'm going to bed. Don't bother me." So they got crazy in Jim's room, and then had this bright idea to throw the TV out of the window. So Ming grabs the TV out of the chest and throws it out the window, and it actually lands on the balcony of the hotel, and it just crashes. And then they're laughing, and then they come back to my room and they knock on the door, and Steph comes in. He's just laughing his ass off. I'm like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Oh my God, look out your window." And I look out, and there's a busted TV on the sidewalk. I'm like, "You guys do that?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh man." And then of course, like the next day, like the hotel was all pissed off, and it was just crazy. That was like just stuff like that. It was typical rock and roll 20-year-old idiots just doing stuff,
There really is something about throwing a TV out a window that it's like a rite of passage. It's like a rock rite of passage.
Yeah, I think that's why they did that. They're like, "Okay, we're on a rock tour. We got to do it. We got to do it. We got to destroy a hotel room. We got to throw a TV out the window. We can't say we've been on tour unless we've done it." But it was innocent. No one got hurt, but it was funny.
Oh, that's so rad. Well, and being on tour with Deftones, obviously you've seen them play, and I mean, prior to even touring with Deftones, you've seen them a ton of times.
Yeah.
Tell me about a show or a performance that you recall, or any memorable experience that you've had while seeing Deftones. I love hearing about people's live experience or experiencing Deftones live.
I mean, it's kind of, it's one of those, they're one of those bands that I think I've thought about this. I think I've seen Deftones more than any other band live in my life. Hands down. I've seen them more than any other band. And I can't remember any really bad shows. Like, there's been times there've been difficulties, and, maybe his voice wasn't 100% or whatever, but they've always put on an amazing show, and the energy's always been there. I mean, back in the day, it was full of energy, and when we were all 19 years old and those guys were playing, it's like, Chino's all over the place, diving into the crowd. I mean, the 97 Round the Fur tour he did, like, Chino was on that's probably the best I've ever seen him. Like, his voice was amazing. He was all over the place, jumping in the crowd, just jokes, and like just having the best time of his life, living his best life. And they were amazing every night. They were just killing it, and I think that's why we had to play as hard as we did, because we weren't trying to show them up or anything, but we had to make sure that people remember who we were, because that's how fire those guys were back then. It's like, if we don't give our all, people are not going to remember who opened up for them. Not even a blip. People are like, "Who? I don't remember who opened up." But now when people are like, "Oh yeah, we'll even open up that show," because we had to destroy it. There was no way. So they kept us on our game. And I think we were fortunate to them be kind of our mentors at the time. Because it taught us a lot. And so, yeah, they were just always been an amazing band. I've never seen a bad show, and their shows have been always great. And, and they don't play to click tracks. They don't play to backing vocals or backing tracks, or they are who they are. And that they have a bad show, they have a bad show, but it's organic. It's not because their DAT went down or something, they're a real band. You can't say that about a lot of bands these days, but they are what they are, and they're a real band. I think my favorite show, going back to stories, this is a pretty funny story, is that so halfway through that American tour, Far dropped off and Limp Bizkit got on. And so the last show of the one Far was on, the last show they played was in Washington, D.C. And so, at the end of a tour, the opening band always gets pranked by the headliners. So Far got on stage, and like none of those guys drank at the time. They were all kind of straight edge. So Deftones thought it'd be a good idea to spike all their water with vodka.
Oh my God.
So they put vodka in the water bottles and put them on stage, and then Farr had no idea. So Sean turns around and takes a swig of water, thinking it's water, but it's pure vodka, and he spits it out. And they wouldn't give him water, so those guys are just getting all pissed and they screwed them. And I think they tuned their guitar, they detuned all their guitars and stuff. And so Farr was all pissed off. And then Deftones got on stage, and then Farr was like, you know what, we're gonna let him have it. So I think it was like right when Engine Number 9 came on, like Farr came out, and they just basically threw, some they had dog food, and somehow they got a bag of flour and like all kinds of shit, and they just started throwing it all over Deftones. Like Deftones were covered in like flour. There was flour all over the stage, over the PA monitors. And then Abe was playing Engine Number 9, and then Chris Robine, drum for Farr, came up and tackled Abe. Abe fell off the drum set in the middle of the song. So they're wrestling on the ground while the Deftones are still trying to play Engine Number 9. And then Chino looks over and like sees Abe and Chris wrestling. And he looks at me, he's like, go play drums. So I get up there and I finish Engine Number 9 on drums. And I'm like trying to remember the song, and it was so fun. And then it was just chaos. And then like Chino fell, and like it was crazy. So it was like, that's one of the shows I'm like, I totally vividly remember everything that happened, because I was just dying laughing the whole time. And then plus I got to play drums with Deftones, which was cool. But
Hell yeah, that's super cool. Oh my God. Is that on the internet? Does that video exist?
No, unfortunately, like that tour, like the only video, like there was the big video cameras back then. So, and no one brought those to shows, and we didn't have phones back then. So a lot of that footage you can't, I've seen a couple shows from that tour online, but it's ones that were like professionally done at the club. But yeah, unfortunately, no fan footage of it, which kind of sucks. I wish I could see some old footage, but
oh my God, that would be priceless. Especially it'd be cool to just have that video of you playing drums with Deftones too.
I know, right? I know it was pretty cool. I don't know if everybody noticed I was playing drums. Everybody's all wrestling and like
I know, covered in flour.
Around. Yeah, flour. Yeah, like
oh, it's priceless. Yeah, I remember. I believe the Minneapolis stop for that tour, it was Limp Bizkit and not Farr.
Yeah. Limp Bizkit did the East Coast with us on that tour.
Yeah.
We played first Ave on that tour.
Yeah. You played the main room first Ave. Was that how cool is that? Right?
That's so rad. That's so great. It was funny too, because like we have a picture. That's a picture of it. Is that so first Ave, we had a park across the street at the basketball arena, and so the Deftones bus was there, and then we had this crappy motor, like 1973 motorhome on that tour that we drove around in. So we had the Deftones bus, and then our motorhome, and then the Limp Bizkit bus behind us. And we took a picture of it. It's the funniest picture ever. It's like these two nice buses and this shitty, like Breaking Bad motorhome maybe sandwiched in between them. It's so funny.
Better than your Volkswagen bus, though, I guess, right?
Yeah, it was I guess.
Apart from that.
A little bit, yeah. But yeah, playing that place was so amazing. Just being there, like Purple Rain, you're like, oh my God, this is Princess Club. It's pretty rad.
Yeah, that's super cool. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So after that tour, let's see, Willhaven, you guys sort of disbanded around what, 03-ish? Or no, you put out an album in 03, didn't you?
Yeah, so I mean, kind of just rode that Deftones wave a little bit. Like we did another record, and then of course, I mean, doing that England, like the whole European tour, like it just put our name up there with like in the magazines and everything. So every time we came out a new record, we got great publicity, and we did. And I mean, Stefan hooked me up with Christian from Fear Factory. So Fear Factory took us out on tour with them across Europe, and that helped, as well.
Totally.
So we got some really good. And then we toured with Slipknot. That same year we did Fear Factory in the US. So we did some really good. I mean, all because of the Deftones tour, really. But I mean, another funny story is that on that US tour we did with Deftones, and around the Fur tour we played in Omaha, Nebraska, and Grady actually got sick. He had the flu, so he only did 3 songs on that show, and then he had to go to the hospital. But Chino came up and sang the rest of the set with us. So Chino sang for us for like half our set in Omaha.
No
and
way.
Yeah, and so and then years later, kind of in like 3 years or 2 years later, I get a call from Gloria Cavalera, was our manager at the time. And she called me. She's like, hey, Slipknot just called me, wants to take you guys on tour. I'm like, how do they even know who Will Haven is? Like, she's like, no, I don't know. They just got to show up in St. Louis. So we show up to St. Louis. We're driving to St. Louis. I'm like, I don't know how Slipknot guys even know who we are. Like, I have no idea how we got this tour, because it was the first Slipknot record. They just started getting a bit of a buzz, and they asked us out. I'm like, why are they asking us out? So we get to the first show in St. Louis, and of course, I don't know who any of those guys look like, because they were all had their masks on and all their press photos. So I had no idea who was who. And I'm standing there, and this guy walks up to me, and he's like, "How are you in Will Haven?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh, cool. I'm Clown. I'm Sean." And I'm like, "Oh, nice. Great to meet you. Thanks for having us." And I was like, "How did we get this tour?" And he's like, "Well, I saw you guys on the Deftones tour in '97 when Grady sang, and then Chino came up and sang with you guys." And he's like, "I just became a fan ever since." And so me and Joey said, if we get a tour, we'd like to take Will Haven out. So that's how you guys are here. I'm like, that's so crazy. Just from that one show,
Bro.
We ended up getting on a Slipknot tour. And Slipknot wasn't even, they were a band then, but they were just starting out. So for them to become who they were and then take us out on tour with them was like, that's another like Deftones connection that just blows my mind,
Wow.
So it's just
that's
little,
wild.
Yeah, it's little universe things like that from the Deftones world, like we were able to capitalize on. And so, yeah, going back to your question, we did a couple records. And then after our third record, we basically kind of disbanded for a little while. Grady went off and went to college and stuff. And we were kind of burnt out, because it takes a lot for us to do stuff because it's not our job. So we got to take time off work and get a capital going to go on tour. And it's a lot of work. So we said, let's just take a break for a while. So, that's an almost a decade-long run based off of sort of almost a whim, the way you describe it. Like it's almost, but you also said something too that was that I wanted to ask you about their mentorship. Mm-hmm. So you probably had quite like some conversations about performance, about just music, about playing music with these guys. Is that fair to assume? You know what? We never really talked about that stuff. I just witnessed. Growing up with those guys, I just witnessed it. Because when I met these guys, they weren't who they are now. They were still a garage band and still trying to find out what they wanted to sound like. And then like when I met them, they just put out that Like Linus cassette tape.
Bro, that's so wild. That's so crazy.
Yes. So they were still trying to learn their craft and like find out what they wanted to sound like. So me observing like how they were growing as a band, how Chino was growing as a singer, how Stefan's songwriting was evolving. And then when they added Frank, that was a whole nother, thing that they added in. And so I just saw them grow from day one, but I learned a lot of like what it took to be in a band and keep your friendship going and, look out for each other and experiment and just keep plugging away, because Chino didn't really have he didn't have a job. He didn't have a car. He didn't have a lot going, but music was his life, and Steph too. It's like those guys basically just said, I'm going full on with this music thing and it's going to happen, and so their dedication to it and their focus on it and how they wanted to get better, it was just always like inspiring to me, and so it was one of those things where I didn't need to talk. I just knew, I observed everything, and plus the Far Guys. The Far Guys were very well organized, knew exactly what they were doing, what goals they wanted, and so it was Deftones were kind of loosey goosey about things. They were just having fun. But Far was more organized. So I got the best of both worlds. Like I could see a band was just having fun with their friends. And then I saw a band that was more business-like. So I got the best of both worlds. And there was never talk about it, but just, I got to jam with those guys all the time. Like I've jammed with Chino a million times, Stefan a million times, with Abe a million times. So just being able to like play music with them and like understanding how they do it was also a big school, because they've always been amazing musicians. So just being able to jam with them is just kind of, you just kind of pick up on things, I've never be as cool as those guys, but,
few will
be a part of it. Yeah.
No, but that's really cool. And that's interesting too, that understanding that conversation came through music, you know what I mean? The mentorship and being able to witness it firsthand, that's pretty lucky, but also having the wherewithal and the understanding to like, All right, I'm gonna learn some shit from what I'm watching, and not just do your own thing or do the rock star thing. I think, well, I'm gonna start my band. It'd be my, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
those are all to me. There's more than just the magic of the thing that happens. You know what I mean? That's a big thing when the men get together and they make the sounds. Like that's obviously vastly, hugely important. But there's a lot of stuff in the universe going around them. You know what I mean?
And I got lucky too, because, when you have a favorite band, you kind of look up to them and you kind of figure out what they're doing. Like, I mean, I love like Pink Floyd. So David Gilmour is one of my is my God for guitar players. And so I kind of emulate him in some things I do and stuff. But back then, Deftones Afar were kind of my favorite bands. So, I mean, not my only favorite bands, but they weren't my friends. I would still love them. And so I was admiring them as musicians too, and looking up to them because they were my favorite band. If they were just some crappy local band, I probably wouldn't have the same, like I wouldn't be into it as much. But just because I love their music so much, I'm like, oh my God, these guys are fucking awesome. I want to be like them. I want to sound like them. I want to learn from these guys, because it's like learning from Michael Jordan. It's like, I want to learn how to play basketball if I can. It was one of those things. So it helped that they were awesome, awesome bands.
That's so cool, man. That's wild to think about. That's really interesting too, to think about that. You identified them as being, again, like just so like your favorite out the gate. That's pretty wild. Do you have a favorite Deftones album?
I like them for different reasons. I mean, I love, it's funny because like when Abe says we're going to go write a new record, I get super excited because I have no idea what it's going to sound like. I've known those guys for over 30 years. I have no idea what they're going to put out. It could be something super left, or it could be something what they've done before. I don't know, but I always get excited about it because it's going to be good. I know for a fact it's going to be good. So I always get excited, and they always come through. I haven't had a record I'm like, I don't like that one so much, so I like them for different reasons because of the time era. I mean, Adrenaline was a big thing for me because I was happy for them because they got signed, they put out a record, and I know some of those songs are pretty old. So, but I was happy that they were finally like doing it. And I was in the board video. So that was kind of my first video my first real video was the board video. So I'm like, just being a part of that, I'm like, okay, this is rad, So that has some kind of nostalgia to me of that record. And Around the Fur, of course, was like, I lived my whole life around that record. I mean, my whole life was based on that record, as far as me touring. And I heard those songs every single night. And that record means a lot to me. But I love them all in White Pony, of course. When I heard White Pony, I was like, oh my God, you guys just went way out there. And it's such a beautiful record. And I remember calling Chino on the phone and I got that. And I was like, dude, this record is amazing. Like I'm floored, And
how does he respond to that? How does he respond to you being like, dog?
Yeah,
that was some wild shit.
No, he's like, cool, thanks, bro. No, he's appreciative of it, but I'm sure he gets it from everybody, like
word.
He's very humble person, and he's very kind-hearted. And he does appreciate what you say. And you might not get the same reaction you would think you would, but he takes it into heart. And he understands what you're saying, and he's a very kind-hearted guy. And so yeah, he appreciates it for sure. And I've only done that on a couple of records, like that was one of them I'm just blown away. And then Ohms. I think for me as a fan, I love Ohms. Like, it's just something very special about that record where it's them, but it's very spacey. It's on another level, and I mean, of course that came out during COVID. So like when I hear that record, I think of being locked up in my house, which I was, but that record gave me an escape, and I'm happy that it came out when it did, because just as they intended, they wanted people to listen and kind of get away from what was going on in the world. And it did. I sat in my house and I listened to it like 4 times in a row, just thinking, wow, this record is amazing. And from front to back, it's beautiful. And so, I mean, that's like, I emailed Chino or messaged him or something. Hey man, your vocals and this record is absolutely amazing, but yeah, I really love that record. And I mean, Sergio's bass playing on that record, oh, I mean, it's crazy. Like, it's so good. So, but I think everybody just killed it on that record, you know, from Steph to Chino to Abe to Serge, you know, even Frank had a big part of that record too. So as a collaborative, that record is definitely, I think, up there right now in my Deftones top.
I sometimes get work because I heap praise on it. Like I love Ohms. And sometimes I question myself and I'm like, is it the recency? Like, is it the fact that it's the newest one? Is that why I get so excited? But hearing you describe it and the things that you're saying reaffirm my position. Like, I really do think it's their best album. Like, I think they're all at the forefront. There's something that feels like Deftones at their fullest form. Like they're just, you know what I mean? Like there's no place that they can't go now. You know what I mean? There's just, they can do whatever they want to with the sounds and make it come together into this like that's just expert. You know what I mean?
Yeah, to me, it's like they took their sound and pushed it even further with Ohms, you know, because I mean, it's always amazing when they come out a record. It's something, it's Deftones, but there's always something new about it. And with Ohms, it's like they kind of just did it almost. It's like they jumped 2 levels instead of 1. Like, you know, we're gonna write amazing riffs. We're gonna put these beautiful things over it. I mean, and Chino's singing is just, his lyrics and his singing on that record, he hits every melody perfect. Like, you can't change. I wouldn't change anything that he sings on that record. It's he nailed it. He fucking absolutely nailed it. And he's a big part of that band. You know, it's like, that music is very complicated to sing over. You know, it's not easy to sing that kind of stuff. And a lot of people just scream over the whole thing, you know. Word. But he finds his places and he finds where he needs to be and he fucking hits it. And so he just nailed it on this record. But everybody did.
Yeah.
It's because there's no weak point in that record. But like I said, they never put out a bad record. I love them all. I love Saturday Night Wrist. I mean, Hole in the Earth, I love that song. You know, I mean, Diamond Eyes, amazing. Like, I mean, all of them. I mean, even there's you know, they get a lot of stuff about Gore, but I actually really enjoy Gore. And there's some of my favorite songs that they've done are on that record. So,
couldn't agree more. I love Acid Hologram. Acid Hologram does not get enough love. Patura Infamante, Doomed User, all that. Yeah, I love big Gore fan.
What was cool about that record is they tried to push it again. You know, like they were trying to push an envelope and try to see where they could go with their sound. And it's not easy to do. There's a lot of bands that do that and they just fall flat in their face, you know, and Deftones, they tried something new and they didn't settle for doing anything else. They keep pushing. That's what I love about that band. That's another thing I've learned about them is like, just keep pushing, keep trying to do something new with your sound. Don't put the same thing out, you know, and you know, people may give you shit for it, but hey, it's you, you know, do what you want to do you, you know, and that's
a concept album, right? Like that's a different, that record kind of stands alone.
Which one?
Gore. And they had an agenda. I know a lot of times they say, oh, well, we get together and we make the music and we jam and it's organic and then we piece it together and make something there. But I feel like with Gore, there was something else that they were trying to achieve with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. From what I understand, you know, I think Chino had a big part of songwriting in that one. I mean, from what I've heard from Steph, you know, I wasn't around when they wrote that, you know, hearing some interviews with Steph or whatever, he didn't have a huge part in that. And which is fine because Chino is an amazing songwriter. And I think like you said, I think Chino was definitely probably trying to experiment with a lot of different things, you know, which he should. He's a songwriter, he's an artist, you know, you should. And yeah, I mean, not to say it Gore is terrible, it's an amazing record, but you know, it's maybe Chino had something that he was going for at the time and was looking to expand their sound, you know, and he, I mean, look at the stuff Chino's done with Team Sleep and Crosses. I mean, both those bands, especially Crosses. I mean, that band is so amazing. So he's got a lot under his belt now. He's got a lot of experience and a lot of music and a lot of things that he could put into Deftones, you know, to make that band even better, you know? So it's just one of those times where he's probably like, you know what, I'm going to try this and I like it. And I mean, and his guitar playing is really good on that record too. He's done some really cool stuff on that record, guitar wise. That really cool. I mean, with some of the melodies that he's done. So it's all part of growing, and that guy, he's a busy guy. He does a lot of stuff, but he incorporates all of it into what he does. And I put him up there with Mike Patton, like he's one of those dudes that can do anything and make it sound fucking amazing,
Yeah. You're preaching to the choir. As far as I'm concerned, like there's nobody else that I know in my life who has more impacted my musical, tastes, my interests musically. Like there's only one person who has as much impact and has had as profound an impact on the way I consume music, what I consume. It all goes back to that dude.
We could probably name on our hand how many amazing like singers, like unique singers there are, I mean, Chino's one of them. There's Chino and Mike Patton, and of course Perry Farrell, and there's those bands that, especially in the '90s, that there's singers that are just unique in their own voice, their style, and they can't be duplicated, and they can make anything sound good, like Perry with Chains Addiction, Pointer from Pyros, and Mike Patton with everything he's done with Bungle and Faith No More, and then Chino with Crosses and Deftones. It's like there's not a lot of singers that can pull all that off. They get another band and they just don't sound good, or it's not the same. But I mean, everything they do is gold. It's crazy.
Were you in contact with Chino when he was going through his vocal stuff, when he had the issues? He had to have like a surgery or something too, right?
Yeah, no, they were on tour when all that happened. So I think that was the self-titled record, I think. They were on tour when I think all that went down. I think that they were on the Conan O'Brien shows when he had like the major issue with it. And they almost didn't even do that show, I don't think. Yeah, I mean, I heard about it, but of course, and they were in New York and I was in Sax. I didn't get to talk to him, whatever. But from what I remember, I don't think it lasted too long. I don't know. For me, I don't think there was ever a threat that he would like not sing. I don't know.
Word. Oh, okay.
Not until recently. I think I saw a video of them at Conan where he was kind of that's when he had his major issue with it, but I mean, it's a lifestyle thing, it's like you got to take care of your body, and especially for him, because he's such a energetic guy and sings and screams. And, I think he learned a lesson that you got to that's your instrument and you got to take care of it. And, you can't smoke, you can't drink all you want to, and we're getting older. You got to take care of your instrument. And
Word.
So it might have been a good lesson for him, because I think ever since then he's definitely taken good care of himself, and he's slowed down, and he's kind of more like aware of like what his moneymaker is. It's his voice.
Yeah,
and
no doubt.
It's songwriting. So yeah, I mean, sometimes shit happens and you learn from it, and he has, and it sucks.
It was such a singular, instrument, really. The demand of that. So that's why I ask.
Yeah.
That's why I'm curious. It's like, I wonder all the time. I would be in his ear all the time. I was like, dog, what are you doing? Like, how are you doing that?
Yeah. It's funny. It was like when he would smoke, and he smokes cigarettes for a little bit. And I was like, dude, what are you doing? Don't fucking do that. I don't think I ever said that to him, but I always thought in my head, like, you have such an amazing voice. Don't smoke, dude. Like,
please, bro.
I always thought that in my mind, like, don't fuck that up, dude. Like, you're fucking one of a kind, dude.
Wow, that's so cool. Correct me if I'm wrong, but was it the benefits for Chi that sort of reignited Willhaven, that got the guys that got you and Grady back to it?
We got back together in 2006, and then we wrote a record. But Grady was in the band for a minute, but then he kind of left again. So we actually had our friend Jeff Jaworski finish that record for us. And then we went on tour with Deftones on that tour. So that was his 2006 Saturday Night Wrist tour. We went to Europe with them for a few weeks, or like a month maybe. And then after that, that's when they started. Maybe toured for a little longer than they started working on Euros. And then that's when she had his accident. And then after she had his accident, I called up Grady and I was like, hey, we should probably do some shows. I went and hung out with Chi's mom, and I was asking her how the family was getting to and from the hospital. And she's like, oh, I don't know. We're trying to like scrounge money to get his brother and sister here, whatever. And I was like, well, I think we could do a benefit show in Sacramento and raise a little bit of money just for the family to travel, for his family to travel back and forth, because it was pretty expensive. So that was kind of the initial thing, is just kind of do something for his, not for anything, but just for his family, so they can have travel money to get back and forth to the hospital. And then, Grady's like, yeah, I'm down. Let's do this. So that's kind of like, and then we did a couple shows in staff. We did one in San Francisco and then one in LA. And then the Deftones did their big one in LA, which we did as well. So yeah, it was kind of, Grady was already kind of feeling being back in the band, but the Cheat thing definitely like united us again. They're like, okay, let's do this again. As just Chino and those guys have said in a lot of interviews that, when something like happens to a friend, and especially a bandmate, you're like, whoa, okay, like this isn't, what we have here is something very special. We can't find a lot of band members that we can do this with. And Grady's been my best friend since 5th grade. So it's like, okay, it kind of woke us up like, oh, let's do this together. Like, we're having fun. We love each other. We've been knowing each other forever. Like, let's just go rock out. That's what Chi would want. That's what we would want, so we just kind of decided to just keep going and keep playing together. And it was a big wake up call, and it was a shitty situation, but we're, everybody's trying to make the best of it.
Can you tell me a fun Chi anecdote or story? Or even just a fun thing about Chi, anything fun about Chi?
Oh man, I love Chi. Like, he was one of those guys. I would go to a Deftones, practice or Deftones show or whatever. He'd be the first one to come up, give me a big hug. When he hugged you, it was like you felt it. Like, he really loved when you were there. He felt like you were the only guy in the room. And he's very engaging, very warm. Just the sweetest guy in the world. I just love going to backstage Deftones show just to see Chi. Just to get him. See a smile and his hug and hear him crack jokes. He's the funniest dude I've ever met. Like, he's so funny. But he could also be a terror too. He'd get this nice where he'd just be crazy and, break stuff. And you didn't want to be in his way when he was crazy. But that's why we loved him so much, because he was just such a unique force of nature, I think, but this is kind of a touching story in a way that when we did that tour in 2006, on that Saturday Night Wrist tour, our last show with them was in Amsterdam, and Lance was with us on this tour too. Lance was playing guitar with us on this tour, and we were at the venue and we're all hanging out kind of in the back of the venue, and Chi walks up and he's like, hey, I got you guys a present. And so he gives us all these boxes, like everybody in the band a box. And we open up and it's these like really nice like switchblades, these knives. And basically he just said, he's like, hey, I wanted to get you guys a present. He's all, I can't always protect you guys, but if I can't, you guys can use these knives. These are going to protect you. And I was like, and we were like laughing. I was like, that's so Chi, like, buy his knives, he had a big knife collection and stuff. And it was just so sweet of him to like buy everybody in the band this beautiful knife. And it was kind of like a going away present, like, thanks for coming on tour with us. You guys, we love you. You're boys, And then, that was the last show we ever played with Chi, was that show that he gave us that present. So it's like, I don't know, it was something universe. Like, he was just like letting us know that he's always with us and always going to protect us, and I still have the knife in my drawer or right here, like next to me all the time. So he's always with me, I always have him. I just always hold him. And I know that, he touched that knife and gave it to me. And, but yeah, that's how he was, he was just such a beautiful spirit person and just a fucking badass bass player. I used to love watching Chi play bass. And my favorite thing about Deftones, especially back in the early days, they did this a little bit when they first started touring, but they would really do it when they played local shows, is that him and Chino would just go back and forth and just bag on each other and talk shit to each other and then talk shit to the crowd. And it was like, there was a comedy act within the show that was just so funny that I used to love going to shows, just watch them like go at each other. And it was done out of love, but it was just so funny, like how they would just bag on each other. And I love that. I miss that part of the show.
Oh, that's so rad.
Yeah.
I feel like so there's this McDonald's show that I've been obsessed with for many, many years. And, Chino still mentions it when they come to Minneapolis, like, we played in a McDonald's parking lot here. You know what I mean? It's and you see some of that at that show where they're like going at each other. Yeah, there's that little, and it's fun to think about that being, sort of their shtick for years and years up to that. That's cool.
There's a video of them. I die laughing every time I see it. There's a video of them playing the Warped Tour, I believe, and they're probably like 3 or 4 songs into their set, and And then Chino like goes over to Chi, and he's like, they're kind of like bouncing up and down together. And then he looks over at Chi, and Chi is wearing the same exact outfit Chino is. They're both wearing a white shirt and khaki Dickies. And Chino looks over, he's all, damn, motherfucker, you're wearing the same shit I am. Like, they had no idea they were wearing the same clothes, so they were on stage. Like, and Chino looks at him, he's all, man, motherfucker, jack my clothes. It was so funny the way he said it. Like, they didn't realize they were wearing the same thing. I was dying laughing when I saw that. But that's how they were. They were just like in the middle of a song, Chino would just have to come up with something like that. It was so funny.
Oh, that's rad. That's super rad.
Yeah.
All right. I've kept you for close to an hour and a half. I want to ask you the question that I ask everybody towards the end of the conversation. And it's inspired by something that Chino said on a podcast, which is that he only tweets out links to songs that he likes. Because
I see him all the time.
Yeah, they are no small thing. It's definitely a big deal for both. I think the artists who get tweeted out, and then for fans, I think there's like Spotify playlists built around them, and podcast segments. So in the spirit of putting me onto something new, can you toss me a recommendation or three things to check out, things that you think are worth people giving a little bit of time to?
Well, I could be. Well, I'll start off with this thing. There's a show that I've been into the last 5 years. Actually, Rick Cossack got me into it. It's a show called Kill Tony, and it's on YouTube. And it's probably the funniest live podcast you'll ever watch in your life.
Word.
And it's not PC at all, which is awesome, because in this world we live in now, everything's cancel culture. Like, they get away with anything, and it's like going back to your childhood when you just talk shit to your friends. It's the funniest thing you'll ever watch. It comes out every Monday, and it'll make your whole week. So it's called Kill Tony, Kill, and then Tony. It's Tony Hinchcliffe, the comedian. He hosts it. And then I guess it's funny because I don't watch any like TV shows, or I listen to a few podcasts, but I guess I could recommend that if people don't know, when Will Haven kind of broke up for a while, we did a new band called Ghost Ride, and it's on Spotify, and it's me and Ray from 10 Fed and the rest of the guys in Will Haven, I believe. And there's only like maybe I think like 300 monthly listeners, but it's a really good record, and I try to like let people know that it's out there. That they can check out, and it sounds like Will Haven, Deftones-y kind of stoner rock stuff, but it's good. And we're working on a new record now that we'll put out eventually. But
word,
I try to put people onto that because they have no idea that it even exists. But it's a great record, and I encourage people to go check it out.
Ghost Ride, you said, yeah.
Ghost Ride, yeah. It's on Spotify. Other than that, I don't know. I've just been like just kind of holed up in my little Will Haven world for the last couple of years. We're on this record, so.
Well, so you got the new song coming in a couple of weeks or so. What about the album? Do you got a release date in mind?
I think early next year, so January, February, hopefully. We are working with a label called Minus Head. That's our friend Brad. It's like his own independent label, and so it's kind of up to him when he wants to do it, but we're trying to think early next year. I don't we don't have any big plans after that, but I wanted to slowly leak it out, songs here, one at a time. Just, it's like that day age where people, when you put a whole record out, people kind of listen to it and then forget about it. So
shelve it. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So I'd like put out a single and people listen to it for a while, and then maybe a couple months, put another single out. Like, oh, there's something new out again. It's just kind of keep the ball rolling, because we put so much time into this album. I don't want to put down people like, all right, yeah, it's cool. I heard it.
That's cool though. I like that. I appreciate that approach. I mean, it's like, we're putting all this time into this. You can take this time with this song. I think that's,
totally.
That's fair.
And plus people like pay attention to that one song, because in a record, you might skip a song, or you'll hear the singles and then turn it on. So it's this way, like every song will get attention it deserves, but we'll see. We'll see what happens, but
that's smooth. Yeah. Well, when we should, cause I host a metal show here in Minneapolis too. So it would be cool to get you, maybe if you would like to join us, we usually, or occasionally we'll have guests come on the show and host with us, and we'll record it in advance over Zoom, like this.
That'd be awesome.
Cut a couple breaks and play a couple songs, have you pick a couple songs, that sort of thing. It'd be awesome. Fun.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I love talking music. It's one of my favorite things to do. So I'm down. Anytime I'm down, man.
I put your shit on the radio, man. I play that shit. I'm like, you know what? These are some songs. These are some jams. I always like people talk about, Far, obviously, and occasionally people will be like Dredge, and Dredge came along a little bit later, and definitely I gave them some of my time. But I'm always like Will Haven, bro. That shit is heavy. El Diablo. I listened to El Diablo today, actually, just for fun, because I knew I was going to talk to you. I was stoked, and I was like, God damn, this shit still hits, dude. This shit.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's funny because like we had no idea what we were doing at the time. We were just like writing songs and didn't even know what it was going to sound like, and it just happened to like come out that way, And and luckily, Chino loved it too, and that's kind of how he kind of took us under his wing. Like, all right, you guys are ready to show the world this record, and. So it's it was a blessing. That whole record was kind of started off for us. It was just a blessing.
It's just rad to hear it in the car for me. You know what I mean? Like I just put it on, I'm like, yeah, that shit just thumps. No, that's super
awesome.
Cool. I really appreciate this, man. A couple more things just before I let you go, because that was the last question officially for the podcast, but a couple more just administrative and sort of thing. Are there any other like stories or anecdotes or things we should offer a little bonus time, things you want to share, things you don't want to make sure you don't forget?
I don't know.
Parting shots.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm stoked you're doing this because like a lot of people, especially when you're interviewing like friends of theirs and stuff, people that know them, because a lot of people just know them as Deftones. They don't know them as individuals, and like how humble and sweet people they are, and how they're so grounded. And there's no ego in those guys whatsoever. I mean, you go up talk to them, they're going to be exactly how they are where they were 30 years ago, and I know they've had, issues, and the band was one thing I'd like to say too, is like Fred is an awesome guy. I know a lot of people like pay attention to Sergio and his departure and everything, what happened with that. But I don't know what the future with Fred is with that band, but Fred is an awesome dude. Like I love Fred to death. He's such a sweet guy. Fits that band perfectly as far as like, personality and attitude and his work ethic. I hope he stays around. But if people are freaked out about Sergio leaving, like Fred is an awesome dude. I didn't know Sergio too well. I never got that close with him because he lived in New York, of course, and I lived in Sac, so he wasn't around very much. But I got to hang out with Fred a few times this year at a couple shows and stuff, and he's an awesome dude. I love that guy. So he's a great fit for us. So any Deftones fans are like worried about that, like he's gelling with the guys really well. He's brought a very good spirit to the band. Like they're happy and they're in a good spot. They seem to be all friends again. So. And Fred, I think, had a little bit of a part to do that. He walked in and made that whole camp a little bit calmer, because it got really bad for a while. And but he came in there and smoothed it out. So I'd like to say that, because Fred's a really rad dude, and I don't think he's getting any attention at all. He's kind of like, oh, he's a fill-in bass player, but he brought a lot of what they needed at the time for all the chaos that was going on.
Do you know how he joined the band?
Through Wedge, actually. So I think Chino had called Wedge, and you interviewed Wedge, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Wedge is awesome. Wedge, he called Wedge and said, "Hey, I think Sergio's out. I think he's quitting or whatever, and we're looking for a bass player." And Wedge said, "Hey, you should try my friend Fred out," because Fred was in Marilyn Manson. And a couple other bands. So he knew Wedge really well. So Wedge was like, "Hey, try Fred out. He's a great dude," And
Word.
Actually, Fred is from the San Jose, which is right up the street from Sac. And I guess Fred used to come to Cattle Club shows all the time and watch Deftones back in the day. So he already knew.
Out. No way.
I didn't know this either. He told me this like last time I saw him. He's like, "Yeah, dude, I was a big part of the Sacto scene, but I didn't know anybody." And so he's kind of like, he is like kind of a homie a little bit. He was around. So yeah, Wedge hooked him up, and because Wedge is from San Jose too, I think. So yeah, Wedge just gave. It was funny because Fred said that I asked Fred the same question. I was like, "Hey, how did you get in touch with the guys?" And Wedge called me, so Chino called Wedge. Wedge's like, "Hey, call my boy Fred," and so Fred got a random text from Chino, and said, "Hey, you want to jam?" And Fred thought it was a joke, you know. Fred was like, "Huh? What? Like what?" And then
Whose number is this?
Yeah, totally. He's like, and then Chino's like, "Oh yeah, sure." And she's all right, show up, come to LA and jam with us. And so he walked in and just started like kind of jamming with them, and that was it really. So it was kind of very, very easy, you know. But yeah, Wedge hooked him up with that. So
that's tight. That's
yeah,
tight. That's
cool.
So crazy. What a small world truly for him to be wow, like that's nuts.
Yeah, be a fan, and then like for years, and all of a sudden you're like in the band, you know. It's pretty
nuts.
Dude,
that's super nuts. Wow, that's incredible. Shit, that threw me off because I had something else lined up that I wanted to ask. You know, I was like, holy shit, that's crazy shit. Actually, it probably was. The question was probably going to be who else should I talk to? Sounds like I need to talk to Fred. I've actually exchanged some messages with him.
Really?
Just over IG. Like, it was fun. So like when everything sort of started to happen publicly, I was asking a lot of the questions. I was like, who's
we were too.
Who's the new bass player at Deftones, right? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like,
me and Lopez were going back and forth. I'm like, who was going to be? Like, I don't know, man. And like, it was funny. Yeah.
That's wild. I mean, that's wild to think about, especially given the fact that it was probably widely known within the industry, I guess, or within inner circles, maybe, that they were looking for somebody. But then when it became sort of public that it was happening, it was like a really like, whoa, what's going on? But he was already right there. It sounds like he was already ready to go. Yeah.
I guess. Yeah. Well, he was with Manson, and then he left Manson, and he was doing a couple of just like a local band, I think. Nothing big. So yeah, he was kind of just waiting around, and then he just happened, and then Wedge just kind of hooked him up with it, and he walked in there.
That's smooth.
You know, as Deftones too, it's like it's more about a lot of it's like personality. You know, like if you go in there and you don't gel with the guys, it doesn't matter if you're Les Claypool, you're not going to be in the band. So it's really about personality, and if you can kick it with the dudes and like be cool and have that swag, you know. And Fred has that. He's totally chill. He's a cool guy. He's mellow. So that was probably, they walked in and they started talking, and he's like, "Oh, I'm from San Jose," and like, "Oh shit, okay, you're down. You know, you're cool." So yeah, he's a good fit, you know.
I'm gonna start telling people I'm from San Jose. That's what I'm gonna start doing.
I know. But yeah, he's a good fit. So yeah, I mean, if you got him on there, it'd be cool, because he has that boy's got some stories, like with being with Manson, and I don't know how much he'll tell with being in Manson, but he's had a pretty crazy few years now being in Deftones, and like and especially being on this tour, because we're now with Stefan not going and stuff. I mean, there's probably a lot of stuff. I don't know a lot of ins and outs with all that, you know, but it's just a different chat. It's like the most different chapter in the band's history for sure. Yeah. And it sucks, because like,
not the most tumultuous by any means, you know what I mean? But different.
It is different, because, you know, Steph is Deftones. I mean, he started the band. He writes majority of the stuff. He's Steph, you know, he's the dog, you know, he's the dude, you know. So but I understand where he was coming from. I talked to him about it extensively, about his decisions and stuff, and I totally supported it. And you know, and he's got to do what's right for him, you know. And Lance was a good fit, you know. He can pull it off, you know. I just don't know what their future plans are. Like, I haven't really talked to guys about that, but I mean, Steph will be there. If they do US stuff, Steph will definitely be there. But as far as overseas, I don't know where his head's at, if he's gonna do any of that again. But I heard through the grapevine they're working on new music and stuff. So yeah, it is what it is. And like I said, they're gonna make it happen. You know, they'll figure out a way. Like I said, we have enough friends and shit that they can pull it off. You know?
Yeah, so. I don't doubt for a second that anybody would. You know, they would. Everybody certainly, I'm sure, overseas is disappointed not to get to see him. But you know, at some point they're going to be old. I think they're going to be old and making music and not really able to tour and do what they do. You know what I mean? Like, bands get old. Like, they just
they could be. Well, they're in a good position now. They're kind of that Metallica stage where they could basically just play just randomly. You know, they could show up somewhere and sell out an arena, or, you know, a big theater or something like that. No problem. they don't have to do these year-long tours that they used to have to do. They're big enough now where they can pick their spots. So they could do a whole record and then like, all right, we're going to do 3 weeks or a week in Texas, or we're going to do one show in New York, or so they're in a good spot now where if they just want to like not do it full time, they have that option now, which is really cool for them. They've deserved it. They've worked their ass off for fucking how many years, and so they're in the spot now where they can make that happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And as long as the music keeps coming, you know what I mean? That's what I get excited about.
Yeah. And I don't think they'll ever stop playing music. I think those guys are lifers,
That's what I mean. Like, I really do think that they might not be demanded to tour the world over, 160 dates or whatever. But if they can keep cranking out the hits for me, that's good enough.
I think they will, because those guys like they make playing music. So I can't see them like, well, I don't want to play anymore. They're not like that. It's in their blood, it's in their DNA. Like I think they're going to make music for another 10 years at least, probably.
Yeah. And if they keep cranking out albums at a few year clip, that's all right. That's like 3-4 more albums. That's good.
And what's cool is I think if they don't tour as much, they can actually sit down and work on just music. And I would be really curious what they could come up with if they just like sat and just worked on, like if they took the Will Haven route and did a 4-year or 3-year break and just worked on music and just chop it up and hash it up and cut it and go with a fine comb. Like, I mean, our record is way better now than it was when it started. So if they just, instead of just going in there and writing a song and recording it, and then Chino doing his vocals, they just sat there and like, all right, let's record something. Let's just go over it. Let's tear it apart. Let's put it back together. Let's do this. Let's do it. And they would make some crazy shit.
Yeah, dude, that's super interesting to think about. That's really interesting to think about.
I'd love to see that. I'd love to see them do that.
I see what is elevated in the rest of the stuff, with the art and with respect to Ohms, like everything they had time to elevate it, and they had time to so seeing if that's the output, it's like, take the time you need, you know what I mean? But at the same time, play shows. I want to see the shows.
Yeah, they'll always do shows, but I think it's cool they're going to do bigger. Like the Deftones, Deftones coming up. That's kind of a one-shot thing, but it sold out in fucking a day, and it's like just the only show they're playing for the rest of the year. So people are like, oh, I'm going to go see it,
I know.
So they can do it. They can totally pull that off, and it'd make an event out of it,
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a can't miss for sure. So the question was like, who else should I talk to? Who else should I talk to? Who would be fun? I mean, you've listened to the podcast, and I'm super excited to have some more fan conversations in the upcoming season, because there's some really cool like diehard fans who I think have some great stories. But who do you think? Who else do you think would be interesting to speak with?
Trying to think. Like, I mean, you had Jonah and Sean; those are good ones. I'm trying to think of our circle of friends. Did you talk to Todd? I don't know if Todd would say much.
I've thought about asking Todd. I've thought about reaching out to Todd, but I didn't know, because there is a certain line like that I want to be respectful of. Like, I don't want it to be too much about their personal lives. You know what I mean? It's great to hear these stories about these great men and knowing that they are cool dudes.
Mm-hmm.
But I also want to be respectful and not be like it does seem sort of like over the line even to ask Ming. Like, I don't want to get too personal. Like, it's because he's but at the same time he was there, so it does make sense.
And Ming has a lot of good stories. I think it would be a fun interview. And I think he would tell some pretty good fucking stories. I don't think he'd hold back too much. Ming would be cool. I say Todd. I mean, Todd, Chino was his best friend forever, and they've been through a lot together, and he knows Chino inside and out. But you're right. He does know a lot of personal stuff about Chino. But I mean, they started Team Sleep together and stuff. That's all our circle of friends too. That's like some of my best friends are in Team Sleep. So
I reached out to Crook, and he was like, I think he just like gave me a thumbs up, but he wasn't like trying to really do it. But I mean, that Team Sleep project I hold that in very high esteem. So if you think any of those guys would be willing to rap with me, I definitely.
I mean, I think maybe Todd would. I mean, he's not really in their world anymore. He's kind of just, he does his own thing. So I don't know how much he would say.
knowing about that Team Sleep time though, having conversations about the Team Sleep album,
Yeah.
the music. God, that
Oh,
that
yeah.
whole thing is so
Yeah.
magical. It's just
And
magical.
Todd would be the perfect guy because Todd started that band. That was Todd's brainchild. And it's funny because like Todd asked me to be in that band when he started working on it. Yeah, he's like, hey, let's do this. Let's do this project together. And he showed me like a lot of the early demos and stuff. And I thought he was just screwing around. I didn't think he was serious about it, so I didn't really take him too serious. But
man.
But yeah, he started it, and then of course it was more his baby project. And then I think just being friends with Chino, he's like, hey, Chino heard it, maybe like heard some demos Todd had done, and Chino's like, hey, let me sing on this. That's kind of how always Chino does it. He hears something, he's like, hey, let me sing on this. So Todd's like, yeah, sure. So and then Chino kind of put the rest of the band together. But so it was Todd's baby, and then Chino kind of just took it over and made it his. But which I think Todd was fine with. But yeah, that was more of an escape for Chino at the time. With the Deftones going to a little Saturday Night Wrestling and them not getting along, and Chino just kind of being in a bad spot. I think that Team Sleep was like his escape. Like, all right, I'm gonna go to Deftones for a while. I'm gonna go hang with, because like I said, Team Sleep is all our closest friends. So it was very good for him to get away, be with his his friends, and be in a band, but being in a band with his best friends, and not worry about business, not worry about Stefan or Chi or anybody. So I think as a selfish way, Chino used that as his escape. I don't think he ever intended it to be a big band or anything. I think it's him like, I'm gonna go do this project, screw Deftones for a little while, and then he's like, all right, I'm done with that, I'm gonna go back to Deftones. So that's when Todd was like, all right, I'm gonna go teach, I'm out. Sure. So yeah, it was one of those things. It's a great record, but it's one of those things I think it could have been better if they'd put a little more time into it, because Todd's a great guitar player. Crook is awesome. My friend Rick, who played bass and keyboards in that band, he's a crazy musician. So if they would, and Zach Hill, of course, is one of the best drummers ever.
Yeah.
So I think if they would have taken, and then some of the songs are really old. So I think if they had taken time and maybe written new stuff and just taking the time with it, they could probably do something really good. But
I think there's some stuff on there though that's just like beyond great. It's just so.
Well, and those are the songs I think that they would have a full record of. There's some of the songs, some of the record is like, it's okay, but the ones that they really put their time into, you could tell it's like, oh, okay, this is Your Skull Is Red. This song that song is awesome. Yeah. And then their single is awesome too. So
yeah, but even there's like a short. I was listening to it recently. I think it's called DeLorean, and it's just like this short guitar. I believe it's Chino. I believe it's just I don't even know if it's a minute of him just playing guitar, strumming some different chords, and then it moves on to the next track, and it's just like such a, I don't know, unique expression in this body of work from this man who's done all of these amazing things, that to have this little nugget, you know what I mean? It's really, and that's one of the things that I think is so special about Team Sleep, and apart from the context and his life that it came out of, it's like there are some really breathtaking musical expressions within it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's funny too, because I don't think Chino was even going to sing on that record. I think he started to, then they started getting guest vocalists. I don't know if you heard the Patton song.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So Patton was on there, and they had the girl singer on there. So they had a bunch of songs that Chino didn't even sing on at first, and then they were going to have actually the singer for Pinback sing it. I forgot his name. They were talking about having him sing on the whole record, and then Chino ended up doing it. But yeah, it's but that's the thing. We've always, the whole Crosses thing was an accident too, So it's one of those things where we all, as a group of friends, we do something, and then we're like, hey, let me get on that, or let me play on that, or hey, can you sing on this? And like, I've been trying to get Chino to sing on our record for our last two records. I've hit him up like, hey, dude, sing on this. Like, oh, I'll do it. And then I send the song and I don't get anything back. So I've been trying to get him on a record for a while now, but I've had a really hard time. But
you got Steph on the last one though, right?
I got Steph. Which is funny because I text Steph. I'm like, hey, dude, you want to help me write a song? He's like, yeah. And then like 2 days later, he sends me an 8-minute song of riffs.
No way.
So I was like, oh shit. Like, I didn't expect him to send me like something that fast. So I had to go chop it. I had to chop it up and like make it a song. But he was on it. He's like, "Yeah, I want to do it." I'm like, cool. So I wish your singer was like that, but
dude, that's that restaurant manager shit. He's like, "I'm on the job." He's like, I'm not waiting on this. I got it.
Yeah.
We're gonna get this done and move on to the thing.
Yeah, I was stoked that he did that. But yeah, that's how we are. You know, it's like we're just all buddies and we're like just hop on shit with each other. And like, you know, I mean, Sean had Cross's music. He had a lot of songs already done. And then Chino came over one day to his house and Sean's like, "Hey," or Chino's, "What are you working on?" He's like, "Oh, this stuff." And Chino's like, "I like it. I want to sing on it." So that's how it started. That's how Cross started. So yeah, it's just we kind of just hop on each other's shit, and then these bands kind of formatted it.
Dude, that's what's up. That's so rad, though. I mean, but what better way, right? Like than that. Like it beats the shit out of some contrived, like, you know, corporate. All right, we're gonna get this guy and we're gonna get that guy.
Yeah,
I guess that works sometimes, but
it's more organic this way, and it's like, but it does funny because it does. I see Sean getting pissed at Chino, like, "Come on, man, just finish these fucking vocals, man. I want to get this record out." So, and Sean will give him shit too. So it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, yeah, maybe they take advantage of situations where homies, you know, like, I'll finish it later, you know, but yeah, it's cool that we still have that circle of friends that we all just collaborate with each other and like still hang out and talk and
except Abe. And I asked this question of Sean too. Why does nobody ask Abe to do shit? They know everybody knows Abe's like the best drummer, right? Like they know people are aware of that, right?
Well, it's fun. Abe's played with us a few times. Had him play on stage with us a few times, so he's actually played live with us, but. I've always thought that too. Like, why doesn't anybody ask Abe? I guess a lot of guest drummers don't really appear on shit too much, but on that song we did with Stefan, at the end of the song, there's like the snare, marching band snare thing at the very end, and that's Abe. So,
word,
yeah, I got Abe on the track. But he's not playing his drum set, but he's doing the marching snare drum. So I got him on there at least. But yeah, I think a lot of drummers have egos though. Like if I told our drummer, like, "Hey, Abe's gonna play this song," I'd be like, "Man, fuck that! I'll play this."
You take
that's my song.
Sticks,
yeah. So those drummers have very big egos, so it would be hard to like convince somebody to, "Hey, Abe's a little better than you. Can you play them this song?"
Yeah, it's not the guy behind the mic you got to worry about. Everybody talks about lead singer syndrome. It's that drummer. That's that drummer ego.
Singers are lazy as hell, but drummers are have the biggest ego in the band for sure.
I'm keeping the time, goddammit.
Yeah. You guys wouldn't sound anything if it wasn't for me.
And then about 10 minutes after this point in the conversation, Jeff's battery died. And honestly, if it hadn't, I would have kept him talking for another hour. Jeff Irwin from Will Haven. Thank you, Jeff. Yours has been an immense contribution to this project, and I am extremely grateful to connect with you personally and share some of your stories here. My name is Woody. If you'd like to reach me, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Woodbruh, WOODBRUH. Those will be the best places to stay up to date on the podcast. Happy Dia de los Deftones, wherever you're celebrating. If you get to make one wish on this special day, let's wish that Teething, Lovers, and Boys Republic find their way to streaming services, all right? Thank you for listening to Deftones, and thank you for listening to Change in the House of Pods.